good to have you join me for my interview series, How to Get into TV, Radio and Film. I have a fantastic guest for you today. She works in radio. However, before I reveal who she is, I'd like to say that if you're new here and you really want to get a grasp of what this industry is about and what job roles are available in this business, then start now and subscribe and hit that bell icon so that you keep up to date with everything and you don't miss a thing. Also, if you've just done exactly that, then leave me a hashtag new in the comments section below so that I can welcome you to the community. Okay, it's time to introduce my guest. I'm really excited to speak to her, so let's go. She has over a decade's experience working in radio, and she's worked for some huge names such as Orion Media, Celador Radio, Global, and she's currently a commercial scheduling executive at Bauer Media Group. Welcome, Debbie Dean. Hi, Debbie. Welcome.
Hi, Samina. Hi, everyone.
So good to have you. So listen, as I mentioned in your intro, you have over 10 years experience working for some amazing organizations. However, where did your story begin? And tell us, why did you want to get into radio?
So I was 20 when I started working in radio. And I'll be completely honest, I never intended to get into radio.
So what was your ambition then? What were you wanting to do and how did you end up in radio?
So when I was younger, I had this dream of working in television. I loved the glamour of it, and I used to watch a lot of TV. Well, I still do. And I always had it in my head that that was what I wanted to do. Now, I've got quite a creative background myself. I went to art school. That is me outside of work. I'm an artist. And it started when I was 20 years old. My very first office job was in an advertising agency. I didn't last there very long, but I got into that job because I knew some of the creative world. I knew how to use design software, and that gave me that step into advertising. Now, I thought this would be a nice little stepping stone to get into television. But it turns out I actually really enjoyed the advertising world, particularly with radio. There was something really exciting going to studios to record radio adverts. And that's where the interest sort of began. Now, as I said, I didn't really last very long at that job. And,
so how did you then, capitalize on that and move on from that?
So when I left that job, I saw a job advertised in a local radio station. It was a job that I'd never heard of. It was a commercial scheduling executive. But I looked at the application. I checked all the boxes. I had what they needed, and I applied for it. And I thought, I'll give it my best shot. I got the job. When I started, I was thinking, well, this isn't really my dream job, but I'll give it a chance. I'll give it a few months and see what's out there. Anyway, I ended up being in that company for over 2 years. I fell in love with it as soon as I started it, and that's where my love of radio began.
Do you know what I really like about this story is because we've all got preconceived ideas about different sectors of work. And, you had this ambition, you were sure you wanted to work in TV, but this is what I always say to everyone, just give everything a go, because you just don't know what you might end up loving something else. So can you talk a little bit about that, how you found another passion, even though you set out to do this, you've ended up doing this and it's working very nicely for you. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So when I got into radio, it was a radio station in Cardiff. It broadcast to all of Wales, and that was real radio in Cardiff back in the day. And there's this, I think one of the really fun things about working in radio is that because it's live, there's this sort of like forgiveness there. If something goes wrong, the show must go on. You've just got to carry on. So it's very fast paced. It's constantly changing. There's always something fun going on because you've got to keep people interested. And it's just amazing to work in that environment as well. Yeah.
No, that's really great. And I just, what I was trying to just sort of prize out of you was that that irrespective of what you might set out to do, life can sometimes put you on another path which actually works out better. That's what I was trying to convey. So let's talk about how you then stepped up the career ladder. How did you do that?
So in the world of commercial scheduling, it's as you mentioned earlier, it's one of those roles it's quite unknown. It's not something you're likely to have heard of if you don't work in the media or even in radio. But it's the job that sits between the revenue coming into the station and keeping the programs on air. It's you've got the money coming into the station, but it doesn't get anywhere without it being scheduled in, which is why we were so vital to keeping things running.
So can you give a breakdown of how that works? So the money comes in here, and then you say you got to schedule it. So can you give a breakdown of what that looks like?
So how I like to summarize it to my friends outside of radio is that it's like playing Sudoku with advertising. Everything has its unique place. You've got to be constantly conscious of how it sounds on air. You don't want to be putting people off by having these loud, crazy adverts all next to each other. You've also got to be conscious of the client. You wouldn't want to have a motor advert playing next to another motor advert. So there's this constant balance of keeping everyone happy. And I found that what I loved so much about that job was it was like a puzzle, and it's a new puzzle every day. You're doing the same job, but you've got a different set of variations in it that you've got to figure out. And yeah, you get to speak to so many different departments in the company as well. So it's a great place for starting off because you get to know everyone there, and yeah, you need a sharp mind for it, but it's rewarding.
And so let's talk about, you say you need a sharp mind for it. What other kind of personality traits, if you like, what other kind of skill sets do you need to be able to do that? Because I won't say I had a go, I've sat over the shoulder and shadowed somebody scheduling, and I was just like, well, and I'm a super organized, efficient person. I like everything just so. And even I found it quite mind-boggling. So yeah, talk me through that. What kind of personality do you need to do that?
So I think it's always good to have a good attention to detail, and just it really helps. It's a great job for people who are passionate about radio, because you've got that in the back of your mind of how it's going to sound. And when you're listening to the radio, you hear the adverts, and then when you've got it on your screen, a list of adverts that are ready to be scheduled into the next day, you're thinking, well, I know how this one sounds, and I think that looks a bit out of place there, so I'm going to move it into this ad break. There's various rules that you've got to work to as well. Like to do with the programming department, you want to make sure everything ties in and make sure it sounds good with everything that they're producing as well. And different events as well, like whether it's a big event in the news, you've got to kind of be wary of, if there's a disaster or an accident in the news, you don't want to be scheduling an advert that might be insensitive to that. So it's definitely a job that you need to be switched on for, and constantly paying attention to what's going on. But yeah, so I think that would be the main thing.
So is it quite stressful then? Do you find it stressful, or is it about easing into it and becoming so familiar with it that the stress isn't there anymore?
I personally am a person who I quite like working in a stressful environment anyway. There are certain times where, January, when there's not much going on in January, so it can be a bit quieter then. But when you're building up to times like Christmas or Easter, bank holidays, when everyone wants to advertise, it can get really busy. There are tight deadlines to follow, and it's just, yeah, fast paced, getting it done, making sure all the adverts get sent to the programming team ready for air.
Okay, so what I'm guessing from you is somebody organized, somebody focused, attention to detail, and somebody who doesn't flap, who actually kind of thrives in a really fast-paced, dynamic, adrenaline rushed environment. So as I mentioned in your intro, you've worked at many places now. What did you have to do? Who did you have to be to learn more, get connected, and move up the career ladder?
That's a good question. So I'm going to take you back to my first job again at Real Radio. And as I said, I quickly fell in love with radio when I worked there. And off my own back, I learned as much about the business as I could. This really helped not only figure out what I actually wanted to do and explore, oh, maybe there's other areas of the business that I want to work with, but it also gave me a more rounded knowledge of the industry in general. And so when I left that job, there were other companies I was able to go to because they were either competitors. I had a working knowledge of their station sound as well. So yeah, I recommend anyone who has a passion for radio or the media is, even when you're working in it, to stay informed of what's going on, not just in your own company, but with everyone else as well, because that's where you get the head start. Because that's something you can comment on when you're applying for new jobs. If you're aware of what's already happening, that gives you the advantage.
And you mentioned, like going to the other departments and getting to know people there. So can I presume that you were interested in what they were doing too, because you wanted to increase your knowledge and fill the knowledge gap?
Yes. So I'm a very curious person. As a commercial scheduler, I am one cog in a machine that keeps the whole radio cycle going. But I want to know what my neighbor cogs are doing as well. I want to know the life of the advert from when it's made right until it is broadcast on air amongst the various programs and music that's going on as well. So it was really interesting for me to not only see the adverts that were being sold and being sent over to me, seeing how that process went. I think in the first few weeks of that job, I went on a sales call to see how they did their sales meetings. I observed, I did not sell. And then when it's when it's booked on and then it gets sent over to us, we do our magic with it. And then, I mean, that's the other great thing about radio, is that it is instant results. You schedule it in, and then the next day you hear it on air, and then you can, when you're listening out for it, you can think, yeah, that sounds good, or you realize, oh no, probably shouldn't have done that. I'll make a note for the next day. So what I understand here is you just went out to understand your environment. And of course, in any work environment, whether it be TV, radio, or film, you've got other people doing roles which all contribute to the end product. So did you learn a lot, and how did that help you? And can you just really just give some advice as to, is that a really great thing for everybody to do, to go outside of their role and to go find out about everything within their environment, their working environment? Yes, so yeah, and another reason that it was important for me to do that is, for most radio stations, advertising accounts for between 10 to 15 minutes per hour. So you're in charge of a significant amount of the day. And when you have that kind of responsibility, it is like you want to protect it, but you also want to know what's going on with the other 45 minutes a day. I'd say working in radio can be a really small world as well. Like there are so many people I work with now that I have either worked with before or we have mutual friends. It's a very connected place, and it's really beneficial putting yourself out there. If it's something you want to do for the long run, then yeah, I would suggest putting in the time to learn. You don't always have to break your back and work your way into the night. Some people do that, but that's not everyone has to do that. But if you've got that interest and you do your research, you shadow other people, you talk to your peers, you ask about their job. Can you just tell me a little bit about what you do and how you got there? It's also a great thing because people love telling you as well, and you make those connections, and it builds your knowledge. There's absolutely no harm that can be done from it, and if anything, I think it just propels you into more opportunities.
I think so. And I think people are really generous. And when you've got a lot of knowledge and experience, you want to share that with somebody else. So it's, like in my career, like you're sharing, when I went to other departments, said, oh, how does sound work? How does cameras work? People were really like, oh, let me take some time out for you and share that with you. So I think it's really educational. And like you said, it opens up possibilities and opportunities. Now, you've mentioned along the way some positives about your job. Now, let's talk about the challenges. What's a hard truth about your role? Like, what is the most difficult thing about your role? And can you mention a couple of the other challenges if, for instance, somebody tuning in today is like, well, I'm that kind of person. No, I can see myself doing that. What do they have to look out for?
Oh, that's a good question.
It can't all be good. It can't all be amazing. All jobs have a few little tricky bits to them that you have to kind of get to grips with. So there must be something. I know you've been doing this for a long time, so it's kind of, you're so well practiced at it. But yeah, just a couple of challenges. That's all.
Yeah, I have to think then. So again, due to the nature of live broadcast media, you don't have the luxury of being able to plan months in advance. It's constantly changing, and particularly when it's on a Friday, just when you're scheduling for the weekend, and maybe sales will drop in at 2:00 in the afternoon. Oh, we've got a last minute booking, but you've already finalized the schedule for the next day. But you're also aware that it's vital to take in that extra revenue. Again, it's about that balance. So if you're someone who likes having structured plans that do not deviate, it probably isn't the best job for you, because it will change and you do have to think on your feet. And sometimes you have to work really quickly to make sure that you're getting in that extra revenue, but you're also not affecting the producers who, need to get these schedules on air so that they play out on time.
Now, I've seen a scheduling sheet, if you like, let's call it a sheet just for, ease. And it's not dissimilar to, like, say, an Excel sheet. It's got lots of little boxes in it, lots of times and, names and details of what the programming is or what the ad is. Now, as you mentioned earlier, your sales team comes to you and go, oh, we've just secured another ad. You need to fill it in. And you've just meticulously sorted out all this really dense, populated Excel sheet. And suddenly you've got to change all that. So that means rejigging it all and redoing the whole jigsaw puzzle.
Yeah. And sometimes I like to joke about the fact that selling advertising it's unique in that if this was a shop and you were selling physical items, when the physical items run out, well, you can't sell anymore. But in advertising, you kind of can carry on selling the advertising availability. And then you learn magic tricks along the way of how do we fit more adverts into an allotted time that's already full. So there's a lot of moving about. There's whether it's moving into different days, moving into different times of the day.
So a huge juggling act, essentially.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. So listen, to wrap up, tell me and share with us, like, what kind of openings are there for scheduling jobs? I mean, where would one look? Where would one begin if if they were interested in this?
So I would generally check with the if there's any networks you're particularly interested in. It's one of those jobs that it exists in every company. Every company needs it, and it's something that has to be done by humans. Robots can't quite cope with that yet. So definitely check with the company websites, LinkedIn, any job search websites.
Do you think community radio is a good place to start? Because obviously scheduling is required any which way, whether it's just for programming or whether it's for commercial. Ultimately, scheduling is a part of creating a smooth output, essentially.
Yeah, and yeah, commercial scheduling is an amazing place to start, because your job covers so much, and it's such a transferable skill as well. Every business, whatever it is, outside the media as well, needs someone who can schedule in some way. So it is really useful. It's a really useful job to get into, definitely.
Brilliant. Well, Debbie, it's been really interesting to learn about scheduling and really get into the nitty-gritty of it and understand it. I know it's a role that not many people are familiar with, so I'm really grateful that you shared that with me. Thanks so much.
Thanks so much for having me.
No, you're welcome. So there you go, scheduling. If you found that interview with Debbie interesting or value, then please do hit the like button. I'd really appreciate your support. And of course, I bring you different guests each week across the industries, TV, radio, and film. So to keep up to date with all my interviews, do subscribe and hit that bell icon so you don't miss out on anything. Now, I've created all this for you. It is a resource for you to refer to, all of you who want a career in media. And alongside my interviews, if there's any other content I can produce to support you, then do get in touch and let me know. So, for example, you may want top tips on how to write a great CV or cover letter, or how to get work experience, or how to network, or perhaps you're, creating your own little mini production and you could do with a little bit of guidance. I'm listening. So do get in touch and let me know. I'm interested to be of service to you guys and help you in any which way I can. Okay, that's it for today. It's so great to have you join me today. Thank you so much. And I really look forward to catching up with you next time when, of course, I'll have another great guest.